Okay, good evening everybody, and welcome to another March Monuments ride. Tonight we're on the Paris-Roubaix course. You'll have to forgive my voice. I've had a pretty heavy cold and I've got a stinking sore throat. So if my voice sounds a bit creaky or a bit off or I'm a bit snuffly, that explains why. I'm struggling with my breathing as well, so I'm likely to get a bit out of breath. Excuses out of the way. We have currently 21 people signed up for the ride, and you can see at the moment we've got 12 on the line. Now this is a shorter course than we've had in the last couple of weeks. We're on week 3 of 4. And this weekend is all about Paris-Roubaix. The Sportive riders, the Sportive riders are going to be riding the full course, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. So this first section is just 64 kilometres. And although you might look at the screen and think, oh, it's quite lumpy, there's very little in the way of can't think of the word of ascent, height elevation, 400 meters, I think. So the lumps aren't really going to make that much of a difference, I think, to this particular ride. And because it is considerably shorter by about an hour than previous weeks, I'm also expecting it to be quite a fast event tonight. So I think especially with it being such a flat start, until we get into like the 20 kilometre mark, I think the group will probably set off at a fair old crack, and those that can stay with it will stay with a nice group until we get to the first real hill. And they are on the hills. There's not much to them. As I say, we've only 411 vertical meters. It's more about getting the distance under your belt, ready for the weekend. I think the whole course goes at something like 265 kilometers. So you're going to have longer days on Saturday and Sunday, certainly, closer to 100 kilometers. And tomorrow you have both the Sportive kicking off at 1300 hours GMT, and then the race begins an hour later at 1400 GMT. So I'm going to be covering the race tomorrow, as I've done in the previous weekends. So the Sportive, I'm afraid you're going to be on your own, but then I will pick up coverage of the Sunday Sportive, and I'll cover the whole event. And that's usually on the Sunday afternoon, around about 3 o'clock, I think, GMT for you guys. And that's 1600 hours for me here in Europe. So I'm hoping we get everybody on the line in time, but it's looking a bit dodgy at the moment. Now I have to jump on the bike to be part of the ride, and then I'll set alarms for every 25 minutes to make sure I don't get kicked from the event. But so I'll pick up commentary as soon as I've moved off the line and we're underway. So everybody enjoy the ride. I think we're going to have a couple of late joiners as well, but with 10 seconds to go, I'll jump on the bike, spin the pedals around, and then we'll start the commentary. Okay, here we go. That's my power showing. Just need my cadence to show, and then we'll go. There we go. And we'll see what's happening. Now, when I use the term race, it's not officially a race, but everybody seems to treat these sportives as a race. And certainly your man off the front here, Kratins, is doing exactly that. You can see the group behind him. So we'll stay with him for a moment or two while I get myself organised and see. The chasers will almost certainly catch up with him, and I think this front group will come together. But the question is, how many will make up the front group, and will they keep a gap? Well, we'll catch up with that dynamic very shortly and find out. I really am struggling with my breathing, and so I'll be taking regular pauses from the talking because I literally am getting out of breath. Okay, let's work his way back down the course then and see what's happened to the other riders while this front group all come together. These three will catch the guy in front, and they'll more than likely ride together. And there you've got Steen. He's a strong rider, or he has been in the past. Mackenzie doing a chase. And this is effectively group number 2 on the road. So they're obviously thinking to themselves, why on earth did the group go off so quickly? But anyway, they'll form up nicely and create a second group. At about 150 meters behind the first group, then there's no worry at the moment. It could come back together, or people could drop off the front group, or people could, from this group, just smash it and go forward. That's an unknown dynamic at the moment, so we'll just keep a look on the road, and you can see that basically that's all there is. There's just 2 groups. So this is going to be relatively easy to keep an eye on, because if I go out front and look at the riders pushing the pace out front and then work my way backwards, you're quickly going to see, the riders on the road. You've got MTO pushing the pace at the front. I don't know what's happened to Descos. He's stopped pedalling at the moment while the group go past him, so he needs to get back with it if he's going to. No, it looks like he's having a problem. It might be technical. I don't know what's happening there. So as I say, this is second group on the road, but they're pretty fractured at the moment. You can see one rider in front of them, and in fact they're not really closing on the group in front of them. The gap is about 340 meters to the front, but they have got some riders in between, so they could well close up that gap. Rosa's just joining them, and then you've got Genevieve is the last rider on the road at the moment. Because ignore me, I'm not taking part in the event. I just have to be a member of the event to provide live commentary on it. So Genevieve is the last rider on the road, and then we'll work his way again. And we've had another rider stop here, Raddy. So I don't know whether Raddy is experiencing technical difficulties. I do know that RGT have had a pretty poor week in terms of they've had a few issues, and I myself couldn't get in the the ride on Tuesday, and when my fellow riders finally did get in, I'd already been retasked, shall we say, in my household, so I couldn't join the ride late, and that's often the case with me. If I miss the start of a race, I'll generally be given something else to do with the family, and can't do a late join. So my time, I have to try and fit it in amongst my two girls and the family, and it can be pretty difficult. So let's go to the front and see what's happening right at the front. You've got Ivan has made a 33-kilometre break, so we should be able to see the group behind him if we switch round. There you go. And this is not going to stick, obviously, at this point in the race. He's just making a statement, I think. Although he's pushing good watts here. In fact, he's pushing very good watts here. How long can he keep that going for? I don't know. Yeah. Okay. And then this is the chasing group behind him. MTO is definitely a rider to watch. Mackenzie's a pretty strong rider too. I mean, I don't know all these riders. I do know some of them. We've had them in some of the other ones. And then you've got a rider in the middle. Of the group, as you can see, Mr. Even, and you can just see the group. Sorry, there we go. Now, is this one of the late? Yeah, this is one of the late joiners. It's a bit unfortunate when we get a late joiner, because you can't really, if the rest of the group have done a significant, I mean, they haven't at the moment, but had the rest of the group done a significant amount of distance and you get a late joiners, they can influence what's going on in the ride. And of course, this series is sponsored by Torm Cycle Clothing, who were giving away a few freebies to the most combative rider, or the best team rider, or the strongest rider on the day. And we generally make that call from the video footage. I'll be doing a highlights program of all the rides and all the races, and in that highlights program it will be specifically aimed at calling out the contenders for the prizes. Well, obviously, if you're a late joiner, yes, you can potentially join in the competition, but you're going to have to be doing something special to be considered over and above the riders that are riding the full distance. And as long as you understand that, then that's fine. But you have to understand that maybe the strongest rider on the road, if he's a late joiner, isn't necessarily going to be classed as the strongest rider on the road, for the simple reason that, somebody who's done 20 kilometres already on the road and somebody that joins at that point in, shall we say, a 60-kilometre ride, of course they're going to be much stronger and they're going to appear much stronger on the road. But that doesn't mean that they are the strongest rider. You've got to take into account the fact that the riders already in the ride have already done that 20 kilometres. And as I said, I've just moved back to the front of the ride now, and you can see that Ivany, who was pushing out some really strong watts, has now been caught by the rest of the team. Now, out front is Steen. His name's not showing on screen, but Steen is a pretty strong climber rider too. I mean, from this group, there's a couple that I've got my eye on, and MTO is definitely one of them. He'll be there in the mix at the end, I imagine. And as I say, it's not a race, but it's an unofficial race. Let's call it that way. So when I refer to it as a race instead of the ride, it's a slip of the tongue, but it is really, in effect, a race amongst these riders. So let's work his way back and see what's happening behind them. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 7 in this group, as you can see from the overhead. So let's work his way back. Ivan is now at the back. And you've got Even, and Even is a good 850 metres off that group. So he's got a lot of work to do to close the gap. And obviously, a solo rider on his own trying to close a gap of that magnitude has got to put out significantly more watts than the group in front of him are doing. And he's not doing that. But having said that, if you look behind him, and we're going to go there now, we've got 6 riders who are making the chase. So there's no reason why these 6 riders can't work together and put in some. Just seen Ivany topping out at 7 watt. I think he may well look 8 point. I think he may well have a misconfigured system. I'm sorry, Ivany, but you're certainly not going to be sprinting at this point. So what's happening to your figures? What's going on there? Anyway, let's get back to the action. This group of riders are chasing the leaders, and as I say, could well end up closing the gap on this this first section of the ride, and then working his way further back from this group. Sorry, this is the front group. Even I'm getting confused by the splits that are happening. Sorry about this. Okay, so this is the front group. Let's work his way back. This is why RGT devs, if you're listening, I really would like the ability to be able to click in on a specific rider in the rider list rather than having to tab one at a time through the rider list with the keyboard, because it would make it so much easier to know where I am and to follow the action. It's quite, it's fantastic what you've done with this software and the ability to be able to commentate, but it would be made so much easier if instead of having to use the keyboard, I could just click in the list. Anyway, that's for another day. So there's Even, as I said, being caught by the group behind him. So if we swing round, you can see they're almost upon him. So they're gonna all come together. There they are. But they're spreading out a fair bit there, and they really need to be riding as a cohesive unit and not sort of like all over the road like they are at the moment with who is it off the back of them? Roz. He needs to close up and get with the ride. And then you've got Tan, and he's a further 300 plus meters off the group in front. So he'll probably wait for assistance from Raddy, who's closing up behind him, this gentleman here. And those two can possibly work together to see if they can rejoin the group in front, or just work together, just ride together. There's no sense in a ride like this in riding on your own. Absolutely no sense in it at all. You might as well pick up a partner and ride with a partner. Now, they've not programmed bots in the ride tonight, and I would have done had I looked at the rider list and seen only 21 sign-ups, and we've got 19 on the road at the moment. I would have added a few bots, and then poor old Genevieve here at the back would have had, go back to her, would have had somebody to ride with. As it is, she's probably going to be doing the full ride at the back on her own, which is a lonely place to be unless somebody drops back and joins her, or she speeds up and manages to catch one of the riders in front. So back on the front, this is the front 6. Is it 6 riders now? 1, 2, 3, 4. No, it's 7 riders now. So we'll just work his way through them. You've got May on the front, Kratin's just coming to the front. And you've got Pliga, MTO. I mean, there's nothing in it here. They're just, this is, you can see the slope is 3.8%. So it's not really enough to split the group up. And in fact, it's going to be flattening out very quickly. The next hill that you can see on the profile, in about another, let's have a guess what we got. I'd say about another 8 or 9 kilometres, you get to that decent sized hill. That could well be a determining factor with the front group. That could well split them up. I mean, I'm surprised to see that riders aren't hanging on here like Pliga, because he really should be putting in a bit of effort to stay on the wheels of these two in front of him. Purely and simply because it's a lot easier to ride as a group than what it is to be riding all on your own. So Kratin's is pushing off the front, but we're on a slight downslope here, so they're all going to come together. Let's work his way back. There's the 5 riders chasing him, but that's more or less a group of 6. And then you've got Pliga who's dropped off the back, and he's already been distanced by about 200 meters, just short of 200 meters. So he's going to struggle unless he manages to claw his way back to the group, because the group following on behind him is almost a further kilometre behind. This is second group on the road. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another group of 7. So some good riders in here actually. So I don't know. They could end up closing the gap when we get to the hill as we go through. And I think we've got a late joiner in. Is it? Is he? No, he's not a late joiner. I've just missed him. So and then you've got Raddy who did manage to close up the gap. And Tan, who appears to be on his own, 400 meters adrift or 390. So, and then Genevieve, as I say, seemingly quite happy to be riding at the back on her own. But it's a lonely place to be, and it's going to be a long ride. And then obviously from the what we call the Lantern Rouge, last rider on the road, we flick back to the leaders up the front. Now I'll zoom out a bit so that we can sort of try and get a view of the road. Yeah, and you can't see anybody else in the distance, so this group is going to stay clear at least for a little while. And it'll be interesting to see the tactics when we do get, with 11 kilometers gone, and as I say, in about another 11, 12 kilometers, we get the start of the first decent hill. It'll be interesting to see what the tactics are going to be there, whether that would be the place to make a break if you're wanting to try and ride the section on your own or maybe 2 out front. But if you look at the following profile, yes, it goes uphill slightly, but it is just gentle in terms of the elevation. And a group together after this first climb can stay together to the finish. There's nothing really punchy that's going to affect the riders in terms of not being able to hang on if they've got the strength to do so. So this is not one for the climbers, certainly. Now, just of note, I've actually ridden this full Paris-Roubaix course in its entirety as a competitor. and I managed to get the gold standard for this ride, so put in a pretty decent performance. But at 265 kilometers, it's a long day out. It's a long ride. I think we were something like 9 or 10. I can't remember. So long ago now. It's in the 2000s, but it. I think it was about 9 or 10 hours. I could look it up. And what you get for finishing or what you got back then for finishing the Sportive was you got given a wallet with the Paris-Roubaix symbol on the front. And it's one of my treasured possessions. I still use it to this day. I absolutely love it. Now you can see, let's just work his way down the course, because these two are making a break for it, which really is surprising because it's still very early, and I'm surprised that the group have let them go so early on in the race, because there was nothing really, there was no lumps or anything to justify them being able to break clear like this. So I think it was just a case of they've proven stronger than the riders behind. Now, obviously, it's not a race, so there's no need for riders to chase. But it does surprise me that these four let them go, and especially Steen, and MTO, to be honest. I expected MTO to be right up there in the mix, and maybe he will be. But to let these two go off the front so early, to my mind, is a mistake. And we could see them pay for it. But then again, they could think, well, they're not going anywhere. We'll let them have a bit of air. But the gap is, I don't know, 130 metres. We'll come back to it. We'll see. I wouldn't have let them go. I'd have really wanted to push on and join them. But that being as it may, those 5 may well cost. Now, Dela Cruz is a late joiner, but he's still to get off on the road. You can see riders passing him at the moment, but you can see from his distance completed, which is 0-1, he hasn't started the ride yet. So he's 10 kilometers in and just joining the road. There he is. Now this is the second. Is this the second group on the road? I believe. Yeah. So this is the second group on the road, and not much between them. You got Raddy making a bit of a split off the front, but there's nothing in it here. But they do seem to be working at a reasonable pace. I mean, we're not going to see. What you have to understand is this is a Sportive, and so there's no team tactics, even if you get members of the same team riding it, and there's no sort of like need for them to go into race mode and think, well, yeah, I need to stay with such and such, such and such. It really depends on who wants to take the first finisher prize. But the rest, there'll only be a couple in this group that think that they can do that. So they're not treating it as a race. I'm used to calling out the race tactics, obviously. Sportives are a different kettle of fish completely. Now, I used to be very, very competitive when I rode Sportives in real life, and actually held the record for 2 Sportives for the fastest finisher. My own Sportive, the White Rose Classic, and the Spud Riley Memorial in Derbyshire. For a time, I held the record for both of those two. So you can see by that I'm quite a competitive person when it comes to Sportives. And being a very lightweight rider back in those days, and quite a fit rider, I was a good climber. And so any decent ride with hills in it, I stood a good chance of being up there. And the White Rose Classic goes up just about every difficult hill in the Yorkshire Dales. So that definitely classifies as hilly. And the Spud Riley Memorial is a cracking ride in Derbyshire, but that goes up some pretty steep hills, including the Cat and Fiddle. So I've done my fair share of Sportive, so I feel qualified to be able to call out on tactics and this and what's going on and the mindset of people, because you know when you get on the start line who are the ones that are potentially racing it and who are the ones who are just wanting to get round it. And you can see that the two riders that were out front have now been joined by Kratins. So either they've eased up or Kratins, hope I'm pronouncing his name right, Kratins has actually put in an effort. In fact, the whole group look like they put in an effort to catch them, which makes perfect sense. And Kratins doesn't want to sort of like go past and try and ride it on his own. He wants to save his powder till later on in the ride. And if this does come back together as a group of 7, so there's 3 at the front at the moment, and then you've got 3 following, so one's dropped off somewhere. If this comes back together as a group of 6, then they need to ride as a group of 6. And I still think the hill, because it comes at less than halfway of the ride, is not going to be the determining factor here. I think this is going to be a classic Sportive where the strongest rider, not necessarily the strongest rider is going to be a climber, where the strongest rider is going to take the first finisher position, because it isn't a course where the climbs are going to have any impact, in my opinion. I've been proved wrong before, but there you go. And you can see from the overhead shot here that, yeah, they're all over the road and really need to become a more cohesive unit. Because it is much shorter than the previous couple of weeks, where we were doing 98, 96, 98, 99 kilometres in the Sportives. This at 64 is going to feel relatively, like a sprint to some of the riders. I know MTO rode one of the long ones, so he was there. And that can often completely change your mindset and the way you take to the ride and the way you ride it, because you know that you're only going to be riding for 2 hours as opposed to 3 and beyond for some of the riders. I think the longest was 3.5 hours on one of the Sportives, where what I try to do and what I've been able to successfully do is cover all the riders coming home in these Sportives, because the way I figure it is, if they can sit on the bike for a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours, the least I can do is show them coming over the finish line. But it's when you start to get over the 50-kilometre mark in virtual riding, that's when it really starts to get hard. 2 hours on a indoor trainer is not easy, and 3 hours is definitely not easy. Let's work his way back and see what's happening further behind them. So these are the 2 chasers. There's nothing in it at this point, and this is all going to, I feel, come back together. At least I think Ivany will close up, and then this rather surprises me, because either he's having an off day or he's just decided he's not going to push it today. MTO is quite a strong rider, or has been in previous editions. But how many of these riders are actually looking ahead and looking at the weekend and thinking, okay, I'm going to ride Saturday and Sunday Sportives? Sugar. Okay. There we go. I need to get back on the bike. It'll reload, folks. This shouldn't be happening, but hey. I'm under the weather, so that's my excuse. But yeah, come on, this shouldn't be happening now. Remembering to get on the bike. Now what it will do is it will drop me in further up the course. So instead of being right at the back now, I'm going to be relatively near the front. But I'll set an alarm for the next 25 minutes and then. So I'm last man on, well, not last man on the road anymore. There'll be riders coming and taking on, but let's get back to see what's happening at the front. And sure enough, these four riders have come together, but how far behind are the chasers? Let's check. So we got four riders away, and then we got MTO, and he's 400 meters off, with two riders a further 40 meters behind him. So these two are going to catch. So the three of them could well end up coming together and catching the riders out front. So that group of seven could become a group of seven again. Because is a further 200 meters adrift in no man's land at the moment. So he's got a choice of waiting for those behind him, which is a long wait, or upping his wattage and trying to close up to those in front. But I suspect then he's just passing me there on the road, but I suspect he's going to be riding on his own for a little while at least. Crosser has left the small group he was with. They're 90 meters behind him, so there they are. But my feeling is that they'll come back together again as well. So I'd expect Crosser to rejoin this group here. Either he will slow or they will speed up and they will capture him again. So, and then Roz is a further 200 meters behind. Currently riding in what we call no man's land on his own. He's putting in some good wattage though, so I don't know what's going to happen to Roz. Fal has been dropped from the group, and he's, you see, with riders like this, when they're riding on their own, it doesn't really make sense. You've really got to try and stay with at least one other rider. You've got Bradley, and again, so all these riders, the last four I've just shown you, are all split by 200, 300, 400 meters, which is total, to me as a rider that sucks wheels, just does not make any sense. Yeah, Roz is asking for help, you see. So let's go back up and look where he is and who can give him help. There he is. Now, he needs to catch this group here, but he's not going to catch them, and they're certainly not going to slow down for him. So what needs to happen with Roz is foul behind him, Ross either needs to slow up and let Fowl join him, and they work together, or Fowl needs to put in a hell of an effort to join him. If he's asking for help, then he's not going to catch the people in front of him, and they're not going to slow down for him. So if he's asking for help, then he's got to wait for Fowl. He's got to join forces, and even Bradley. And if the three of them came together and rode as a cohesive unit together, they could potentially catch up with the ride group in front of them, which is only a kilometre. Kilometre can be closed on this kind of terrain easily. So I'm at a loss to try and explain the tactics that these folks are using. I mean, I can understand Tan dropping to the back and just being quite happy there. He's just spinning the pedals, and he doesn't look like he's in any hurry to go anywhere. And that's no disrespect to Tan. It just, my guess is he's just decided, I just want to get round the course. Genevieve is putting in some nice wattage, and again, because she's going to be riding on her own, she's another lady that's just going to want to get round the course. And Dela Cruz has not started. He late joined, but for some reason hasn't been able to get started. Now, the four out front are still four out front, and this next hill will be very telling on this little group. So we'll stay with them and see what happens. I'm going to switch the camera view around, and we'll try and get a picture of them as they hit the hill, and see who is going to try and make a break. And these two have. So let's zoom out and see if we can get an overhead. There we go. But Steen's having none of it. He's joining them. But what's happened to Forfar rider on the road? Let's just check. There we go. So you can see that Ivany is being distanced slightly. But I think if he puts in an effort, he'll get back on. He can't allow it to grow, though, because if the gap gets to about 50 metres, then he's really got to burn a match, a term we use in racing. He's really got to burn one of his matches to close the gap. And to be honest, it looks like this gap is opening up. He's putting in a bit of an effort now. And now is the time to do it. If he lets it get to over 50 metres, then he's probably gone for the time being. But if he can peg it, and it looks like he is pegging it, and it looks like he's making the effort to get back, yeah, I think he's realised that he's at the... you can see from his wattage, look, he's putting in decent wattage to try and close this gap, more than the three riders in front. He's putting out 5 and they're putting out 3. So he should close this gap very nice and steadily. And that's good riding. That's good, clever riding, because had that gap gone out, and he hasn't closed it yet, I mean, this is hard work. I've been here so many times. To try and close a gap like this, let's see if we can find him on the road. There we go. It's pretty difficult. You're having to put out a lot more wattage than the three riders in front consistently until you get on the wheels, and you can't ease up once you get on the wheels. You've got to keep it going for a few spins. So he's trying hard, but I don't know how. The saving grace here is they're approaching the hill, and you can see the slope's already gone to 1.9, 2.9. So the saving grace is he's going to come back because he's stronger than the riders in front, and they're going to be slowed by the hill. So he is going to rejoin them. But that was touch and go. Had this hill not been part of the dynamic, I think he'd have been gone. I don't think he would have closed the gap. So I think he will now because he's that much stronger, riding much stronger than the riders in front. And when you ride at a higher wattage on the flat, uh, you don't significantly close up the gaps as much as you do by riding higher wattage on a hill. When you ride higher wattage on a hill, you close the gap much quicker, which is what he's done. And he just needs to keep it going now. Cratins look like he's dropped to the back, but yeah, this hill shouldn't be so difficult that they can't stay together. And they need to work really hard and stay as a group. Because if one rider drops off the back on these kind of slopes, then he's going to be toast. He's going to be gone. Because once they get to the lip and start rolling over the other side, if you're 20 meters off, the gap is going to open up tremendously fast and you're not going to be able to close it. So you need to be in touching distance of the wheels in front of you as they reach the lip of the climb. Sorry, the lip of the downhill. Okay, let's find out what's happening further back. And these two are on the climb as well. Now this is a chance to close up on the leading group if you've got that extra little bit of strength. I always like it when they throw in the odd hill like this in a course profile, because if I am struggling or I have been dropped, I can generally at least make an effort on the hills. It doesn't mean I'm going to close the gaps, but it does mean it's my terrain. I can make a bit of an effort and maybe pull some time back or some distance back. But this is not a climber's profile. This is one for the rollers. Now Pernat has done a good job of shooting off the front of his comrade Hornby. It's a nice effort he's putting in. And then you can see Hornby is being swallowed up by the rest of the little group he was a member of. So although they've split up on the road, the group number 2, I still feel that this group could rejoin. There's only 800 meters between them and the front end of the ride, so there's no reason why they couldn't close that kind of a gap on the remaining part of the profile. Let's find out what's happening behind them. So then you've got Disco, and Disco's is in no man's land. He's out on his own in the middle. Riders are over a kilometre behind him and almost a kilometre in front of him. So a lonely ride for him at the moment. And then these are the ones that are obviously chasing. Well, I won't say chasing him because they're more than a kilometre behind him. But it's nice to see that they've come together as a small group. So effectively, this is group 2. And what they want to try and do is ride as a group and not be battering each other. Roz has dropped off the back, you see. He needs. Now, he said he needed help, but did he put in an amazing effort to get back to this group? Or did the group slow, and no, I think he probably put in, looking at what he's doing now, I think Ros probably put in a strong effort to get to this group, which is pretty impressive because he was a long way off. Now, when I do the editing of these rides for the highlights programs that I'm going to do, I'm probably going to put out one or two videos of the highlights of the ride. In fact, it probably will be two, because one will be highlights of the Sportives and one will be highlights of the races. And it won't be until I cut and copy the highlights programs that we make the decision, and it won't be me that makes the final decision, but I'll be the one that sort of like gives recommendations on who are the most combative riders, because it's difficult, as and Ros looks to be stopping here. It's difficult to call out the strongest rider when you're constantly switching in between the footage. But by looking at it afterwards and looking at distances closed and work put in, etc., it soon becomes pretty apparent who are the ones that are putting in, the best ride, are putting in the most effort, are doing the best teamwork. I mean, the first race was phenomenal in terms of race tactics from the OTR team. They were just simply sublime. And if you haven't seen that video, go back and watch race number one. Well, all the races have been fantastic, but race number one, in terms of team tactics, was absolutely stunning. And in my mind, a template for how it should be done. How you work over your opponents, how you decide who's going off the front, and then you rip it up, and it was pretty impressive. So what I'm trying to get at is that decisions won't be made while I'm commentating on this ride on who's the strongest rider. I will make sort of observations, obviously, and sometimes it's a lot easier to do that if you get one or two riders standing out. But it won't be until I put the final edit programs together that we'll know. What I did in a couple of the earlier races was I actually asked for people to leave comments in the comments section about who they thought was the strongest rider, or the rider that deserved the most combative rider, or the best team rider. And it's a bit difficult with the trees getting a good line, trying to watch them on the road. There's Genevieve. De La Cruz is still showing us on the road. And then we're back to the front, because obviously when it gets to me, because I'm last person on the road, let's see if I can find a better view. See if I can get in amongst the trees and find a better view for you. You've got May trying to make a break off the front, but he's going nowhere. He's only 20 metres ahead of the group. There he is. We'll stay with him for a while. I'm just going to jump back on the bike and make sure I don't get kicked out again. So what do you think, folks? Do you think these four are going to ride more or less close enough together to be called a group to the end now, or do you think it's going to split? There's the halfway point. So that yellow kite signifies the halfway. So 32 kilometres gone, 32 to go. And the terrain, I won't say gets easier, but in terms of lumps, it certainly gets much easier. You've got one more section with a hill in it coming up pretty shortly, and then it's just bumpy then to the end. So this could well stay together. For a while. Let's see what's happening further back. So these two are only 70 metres adrift, so they can close it if they want to. Now this is a late joiner, so he's not actually part of it. I'm trying to follow May. Who's May? Come on, May. So you've got Steen. Looks to be struggling a little bit. Ivany, look at the figures he's putting out. And Steen's working really hard here as well. I mean, this is a short, little steep hill, but it's big ringable. Because it is so short, you stick it in the big ring and you just push the pedals around. You know, you can see from the cadence that's exactly what he's doing here. He's in the big ring pushing the pedals around. Ivany. Okay. But I'm surprised to see Steen struggling at this point. Is he going to close it up? And then we've got this small group of 5 riders coming in. Let's switch it round a little bit and zoom in. So who have we got here? We've got Linden, Mackenzie, MTO. Who else we got? Hornby. Yeah. And Pernat rather. So they're riding well together. They look to be swapping over the leads and working. One of the things I do find difficult when doing the commentary is to take notice of the chat. And I posted in one of the forums, IGT Cycling Users, whether any of my fellow streamers had found a way of isolating the chat onto a different screen. And I'm going to look at doing that by means of from the iPhone, maybe mirroring it to a separate screen, so that I can follow the chat, because I'm finding it difficult to try and watch what's going on the screen and actually follow the chat at the same time. It would be nice to interact with the chat. I mean, there's not an awful lot going on at the moment chat-wise, but it would be nice to be able to interact. And so I'm going to look at a way of possibly being able to do that in the future. So you saw Steen come back to this group. Did he? Oh no, he's in the following. This is the front end with May leading it out with Ivany, and then Kratin's just off, and Steen's 300 meters. I thought I saw him with the group, but obviously not at the moment. So he's in the middle. Dela Cruz has finally got going, but I say, and as I say that, he doesn't look to be pedalling at the moment. So I don't know what's going off with Dela Cruz. He's certainly not part of the ride. Now Luigi really should join this group that are coming up upon him, and just ride with them, I suppose. As long as he doesn't influence things in any way, shape, or form, which I don't think he's going to do. They're going to leave him standing. Yeah, unless he decides to put in an effort and get with them. But yeah, he's probably he's joining them. That's good, because that's what he needs to do if he wants to not ride on his own. He needs to. It does look like he's struggling to get on to this group here. They're doing significantly more watts than he is. These are working well. I said earlier when I was watching them, they're working as a really good cohesive unit. And I'm just surprised to see them so far behind the leading group if they're working like this. But if they keep this going, I mean, yeah, they're not putting in terribly high wattage, but it's consistency. And if they keep a consistent switching about like this, taking it in turns, then there's no reason why they can't close up the gap to they're only 1.5 kilometers behind. And that can be closed once we get this next hill out of the way, because there's absolutely nothing then in the profile that suggests there's going to be any difficulty. So yeah, we could see a bit of a change around after this this next hill. And when I say the next hill, I mean the hill that these guys are on now, and just getting to the crest of. And it is just a hill. You can see 3.8%. I don't think it gets any steeper than that, or if it does, not much. So it's again, this is not really a tester for the riders, because they just big ring it. So these three are getting to the top, and then behind them you've got Steen, who really does look to be struggling. Oh, he's just decided, no, okay, I'm happy just at my own pace. I mean, the guys in front of him are putting in some silly wattage. Let's just see what's happening. Yeah, they're just attacking each other. A bit early for that, I feel. But hey, and that's it. That's the last of the significant slopes now. There's a couple of very small ones right at the end, but that's it. So there is absolutely no reason why these three can't ride together and stay together now until pretty much the end of the ride. I'm not saying that's going to happen, because they seem quite content to attack each other, which if they've got the strength to do, good for them. So Steen is just going to, I think he probably will get picked up by this group behind, and I hope they stay together. I hope they don't start splitting up, because this group could well influence the front riders if they work as a nice unit together. But, I mean, they're on the slope at the moment, but once they finish this slope and they get to the crest, then they'll all come together and work again as a good unit. Now it's showing 20 riders online, but I'll be honest, it's not looking like 20 riders. So where are they all? Luke, you there? Della Cruz is back on the road, finally riding. Of course, he's putting in a good effort, but once again, he's going to be riding on his own for a while because he's in no man's land. And Pelagia will get joined by Raddy. So these two will come together, as you can see. And then Even is not that far off either, so when I make the point and I speak about riding together as a group, it's a lot easier if you're sharing the workload with a couple of riders than what it is riding on your own. Okay, this is a late joiner crosser. You can see from the distance that he's completed. He's a late joiner, 10 kilometres in. These two are full riders. You've got Bradley and Fowle. So there's a good bit of difference between the front end of the ride and the tail end, because some of these riders haven't gone under the halfway point yet. Genevieve is looking very strong though. I'm surprised to see her on her own when she's riding as strong as this. But I know it's incredibly difficult for the ladies in terms of they have to put out more wattage than the guys because they're so much smaller. So, and Rayner is now last man on the road, coming up to the 30-kilometre mark. Getting back to the front, yeah, we've got 3 riders. So it'll be interesting to see whether these 3 riders do actually stay together or whether they continue to hammer away at each other. This just really surprises me. It really does. Just maybe I'm doing it wrong, but if I was the strongest rider of these 3 riders, I'd be hiding it, and I'd be taking advantage of riding with another couple of riders, doing a bit of drafting, doing my turns on the front. And I wouldn't be wanting to show my cards. I wouldn't be wanting to show my hand. I'd be wanting to get further into the ride. Okay. So Steen is being distanced fairly significantly now. And there's an argument that says that these riders aren't going to catch the front group now because of the terrain. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's a major task for them to chase now. A bit of a shame. I would have liked to have seen more of more of like a race within a race. Um, Alan Bradley. See, hardly anybody's riding. A couple of riders are, but hardly anybody's riding as a. And there's Rayner going past Genevieve. So Genevieve is now Lantern Rouge once more. I think this is it, folks. I think you're looking at these three staying clear. I don't see them being caught now. Steen is managing to hold the gap. I don't know whether he'll manage to close it up or not. And then the next group is 2 kilometres, 2.1 kilometres behind. So we'll keep an eye on that 2.1 kilometres and see what happens to it. But my guess is that these three are out, and it's between these three who is first finisher. So who's your pick from these three, eh? I mean, Ivany was the one that was showing the strongest off the start line, and I did have concerns. In fact, let's just, for some reason, Crattins is not showing any cadence or heart rate, but I mean, heart rate is not a problem, but cadence, I don't know why his cadence isn't showing up. Let's go and see if we can pick up May. See, if that's to be believed, if you look at the heart rate there, I mean, the power's 200 watts, so, but hardly pushing the boat out in terms of effort here. Occasionally rising to 3, but not really pushing the boat out. And Ivany, this is more like it in terms of, the numbers he was putting out earlier. I thought maybe he got a misconfigured system because they were just absolutely crazy. But maybe it was just the initial adrenaline he was getting rid of. Because now he just looks, although, say that, and his power's all over the place. But it doesn't look like he's even working now with a heart rate of 113. And sure enough, if you like, he's sat in and he's drafting. There's no reason why his figures should be anything special. But it just surprises me by look at the rider list like I'm doing here, and you can see that the small group behind are putting in 3 watt kilos, give or take, and this group are putting in 2.3, with an occasional, there's May, he's had enough, he's saying, no, we need to work harder, because the group behind are actually catching them. They've closed up from 210 to 194, 195 now. So, yeah, full credit to May, who simply said, nope, come on, guys, we can't be riding at 2.3 watt kilos. So they're actually putting in, let's see if we can get around and find them again. There we go. So May shot off the front at 10 watt kilos sprint just to get them into action. And look what's happened to the gap. It's gone up again to 2.03, 2.04. Which is what they needed to do because the guys behind were closing in on them. So if these three want to stay clear, they've got to be working at least the 3 watt kilo pace. They can't be doing 2.3 because that's not going to cut it. Not with a chasing group. Ivan is a strong. I get the feeling that he's just he's just saving himself. I think he's trying to do as little as he can. What are they saying? Yeah. Okay. Has Steen decided to? Let's check back on the road. Yeah, Steen's now been joined by the riders behind him, which makes perfect sense because he was going nowhere on his own. And 4 riders can work much better than 1, that's for sure. And they were closing the gap. It's going out again now because the front riders have picked it up. So the gap is going out, but they were closing it, which proves that they can do it. I think they've just got to keep their heads down and see what this front group do. Raddy's saying, I hope we can do it. So let's have a look and see what Raddy's doing. Where is he? So this is second group on the road. These two are right. Here's the third group on the road with Raddy in it, and Raddy's hoping to do it in sub 2 hours. And I can tell you now, Raddy, that is dreaming, mate. You're not going to do it in sub 2 hours. Not at your current pace, I'm afraid. There's no way you're getting up that hill and down the other side, and then, yeah, you're not going to do 24 kilometers in 45 minutes. I don't think so, anyway. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Good riding, though, to come together as a unit like you're doing here and working together. That's good riding. I mean, the front group, let's just work his way back and see what's happening further behind. With Val and Bradley are not far apart. And then Genevieve is overtaken Rayner again. I don't know what Rayner's doing. He's fluctuating backwards and forwards. But currently Lantern Rouge. What time have we got? 2012. I'll get back on the bike in a minute. So yeah, and I mean Genevieve is just looking so smooth. Bradley and Fowl, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to see Genevieve catch these two, to be honest. But we'll see. Then this is a third mini group on the road working well together. And they've done the hard work now. They've done a Cruise and Lovely in the middle, but they're late joiners. And then this is second group on the road. And once again, they've cut some of the lead. If this small group of 4 were to really get their act together, I see no reason why they couldn't make a fight of it in terms of getting to the front again. I really do think they could do that. Whether it will happen or not remains to be seen because these are starting to push the pace up as well. Now, time-wise, these front leaders are certainly going to finish in sub 2 hours quite easily. So I think we're looking at about 150 time-wise for these folks, maybe. So this is going to be a relatively early session for me in terms of, some of the others went on for 3 hours 45. So by the time I'd sort of like done my intros and then waited for the last rider coming in. So this is going to be nice. I'm going to be able to go and have my cup of tea and my piece of cake, rejoin my family. But you can see Ivany on the front now putting in some good wattage. So he's trying to pull them along. May's just taken over from him and should raise his wattage to yeah. So the gap keeps changing. Oh, excuse me. They've had it under 2 kilometres, and then it keeps going above 2 kilometres. It's currently 2:20. So it's difficult to call this one, but I still maintain that the first finish is going to come from these three. I don't see the group behind. They could do, but I don't see them closing the gap. I think these three will push on when they need to, and they'll keep their advantage because they'll be watching it as well. They can see the rider list on screen. They'll know what's happening behind them. And we've only just over half an hour's riding to go. They can afford to, they know what they've got left in the tank. They can probably think to themselves, okay, I can push on a little bit. I don't think they're going to start really attacking each other until much later into the ride, unless one of them does what May's doing here. I don't think he's not trying to break away here, but the way to test and see who's strong in the group is simply to raise the pace to an uncomfortable level and keep it there for a while and just see who comes onto your wheel. And the answer is all three of them, or two of them. So there's his answer. You see, he's riding at around the 4 watt kilo mark, and the others are having to put in a bit of an effort to get with him. But they're doing so, and from what I can see on screen, reasonably easily. So I don't think any of these three riders are in any difficulty at all. I mean, but May is constantly pushing off the front just to stretch it. I think he's saying, okay, come on, let's see what you've got. And they're just happy to let him go, let him do the work out front. That's exactly what I would do. I wouldn't go past him and say, okay, you can do 4, I can do more. I'd just sit on his wheel. You want to pull us along, you're the strong man, you pull us along and I'll take you at the end. Which sounds a bit unfair, but it's not really. It's just, that's... He's definitely pushing them. Making it very uncomfortable for them. I mean, this is strong riding to keep that pace going like he is doing. That's, I look at Ivan, just saving his wattage, and whoa, okay. I actually said, I need to get on the bike, and then I didn't. So 29th, okay. It'll reload up again. I do wish there was a way of doing this so I didn't have to get on the bike every 30 minutes. I mean, it seems crazy. You should be able I should be able to commentate without having to jump on the bike at all. But and what it does is it splits up that's notification you just heard. It splits up the Strava files as well. So it's a bit confusing, not just for me, but for everybody else, because I'm getting given kudos on the rides by let's turn the pedals once more. There we go. So I'm once again back in the ride near to the front with 12.8 kilometers to go. So we'll switch to the leaders and see how much they have to give. And the leaders of 12.5, so you can see I'm pretty near to the front end of the ride, and Ivany is making a little bit of a break, but he's not going anywhere because these two are quite happy to stay with him. And as I say, I don't expect anything different from these three. I think they'll May's doing the majority of the work, but is he going to be the strongest rider when they're coming into the finish? Because if the other two are playing smart and doing what I would do, which is saying, okay, you want to prove yourself the strongest, get on with it. But Ivan is having a push now and again. I mean, look, he's going 9 watt kilo off the front. So he's having a dig here. This is a definite attempt to break. I don't agree with this, but if he feels like he's strong enough, then and he can get a gap, there's no reason why he shouldn't go for it. We'll stay with him. I was going to flick through the field, but we'll stay with him and see, because he's pulling out a gap here. You can see the meters going up. He's 64 now, 60. So he is actually pulling out a gap, but then again, he's riding. His wattage is coming down to something sensible now, because he couldn't keep 5 watts going for forever. And you can see that once his wattage actually drops to what I would call a normal level, a non-sprinting level, you can see quite quickly he's being brought back. I mean, they're closing the gap on him now pretty significantly by doing less wattage than he is. So they're doing less wattage and bringing the gap down. And that's always going to be the case. Two riders can close upon one rider unless he's doing a lot more wattage off the front, which is why I say, if somebody wants to prove themselves a stronger rider on the front, let them get on with it, because you're just going to save your power till later in the ride. But what's happened here is not quite what should be scripted. Kratin's in the middle has decided to try and close the gap on his own, whereas if he'd stayed with May and worked together with May, they were closing the gap nicely. Two riders can close the gap, but one rider on his own, like the riding at the moment, that's just nonsensical to me. Okay, we're going to come back to these because I think Ivany will keep his gap for a little while. The two have joined together behind him now. So if they ride, if they share the pace, they can close up on Ivany, and we'll come back and find out in a minute. But let's just let's give some fair coverage to the guys behind. These riders have ridden really well together. I am so impressed with with this ride, and particularly with Steen for having the common sense. You know, he was like third man on the road, fourth man on the road, and just stuck in no man's land. And he decided, you know, hey, I'll tell you what, I'm going to join forces and then ride strong. And that's exactly what he's done. And that's clever riding. And you can see, look, he's getting on wheels, he's doing what he has to. Clever riding. I like to see that. And this is one of the late joiners, Roubaix. Raddy and his team. Now they've already stated in the chat that this pace is quite nice for them. This is, you know, 2.5 kilo. What kilo? They're just going to be happy to get to the finish riding at this pace. So they're not looking to close any gaps. They're just, you know, they're just looking to finish off the ride in style. Ride as a group. Absolutely the correct thing to do when you're at this stage in the race and in the ride, and you know, you're not fighting for positions here. Good riding. Poor old foul in no man's land. Bradley's not far behind him, and I am surprised they're just not riding together. Let's see if we can get them both, a picture of them both on the road. You see, I know I keep harping on about it, folks, and I will continue to do so, because to me this just makes no sense riding as solos. You know, ride as a team. Just doing this, just, you know, one rider out front and then the other. I'm sorry, but I don't understand it. I'm at a loss to know why somebody would want to ride like that with riders around them. I mean, I ride a lot of the time on my own because there's no bloody riders around me. They've dropped me. Or, you know, when I say they've dropped me, often it can be because I'm so busy commentating and doing the other part of my job. I don't concentrate on the riding and I lose the group. And that's happened quite a few times. It's quite frustrating because on at least 2 occasions, I was definitely one of the strong members in the group, and I get dropped by them purely and simply because I'm doing other things, watching different camera angles, switching around, following the ride or the race, and not watching where I am in the group. And when I return to myself in the group, I'm gone. I'm no longer part of it, and it's quite comical, but it's not at the time. I get quite annoyed with myself. So Lantern Rouge is Rayner. And let's find out what had happened at the front. Did they... yeah, you see, they all picked up Ivany, which I knew they were going to do, which is why I wasn't in any hurry to get back to them. It could well come down to a sprint. I don't think it will. I'll put my... or should I say, I'll come off the fence and say this is not going to go down to a sprint. One of these riders is going to break away before the end of that. I'm convinced. So that's me off the fence. Who's going to take it? Who's your money on? I'm going to go with Ivany because top end Watts. May looks to be the overall strongest, and that's what he's trying to prove by doing all these pulls on the front and upping the pace. But I think Ivany has got the most Watts to play with from what I've seen. So I would expect, you know, he's going to head for home when we get a bit closer to home. We'll see what happens. They're riding well together now. This is sensible riding. Let's see what's happening behind them. Look, they're riding pretty well together, pretty close up. That's good riding. But these four have really impressed, and as I say, particularly Steen. Really impressive riding here. Pernat has done a wonderful job. And so they all have. Linden, MTO, these four have been, for me, you know, probably the most coefficient of the whole ride. I mean, there were 5, they're down to 4, but they're working so well as a unit. There's just, they're all right, they're not catching the front end, but they're just working so well as a unit. I'm so impressed with this. One of the late joiners out on his own in the middle. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his name. Is it a silent L, or do you go Luby, or is it Juby? Not sure. And then this little group, we'll get to the end together, more than likely. They've already stated that, so I do think they'll stay together. Although, wasn't he with them? Has he been dropped from that? Yes, I think he was. I think this fellow, Telly Georges, has been distanced from them, and it looks like the distance is growing. So he obviously found the pace a little bit too much for him. Having said that, if you look at Raddy's figures that he's putting out, he is pushing the pace up and going red occasionally. So he's in a hurry to have his cup of tea, which is good news for me. Bradley and Fowl again. Look at the distance between them, 100 meters. I just don't. I've laboured it. I've laboured it too much, but I don't understand why they don't ride together. I would love to see Genevieve closing the gap, but I don't think she's going to do to the guys in front. And this is the really annoying thing for me, and the reason why I think ladies are so disadvantaged when it comes to this virtual riding and racing. I mean, she's putting out far more wattage than the people in front, but not closing the gap, and that just seems unfair to me. And that's because, she probably weighs something like in the 50 kilo range, 50, 53, 54 kilos, whereas the guys, probably double that in some cases. But she's putting out double the watts, not double the watts, but a lot more watts than the guys in front, and not even getting close to closing the gap. And that just seems unfair. I don't know. Is it a ride dynamic thing? I mean, let's just go to Fowl and look at Fowl's speed. 28.5, 28.6. Okay, we'll call it 28 and a half. And then Genevieve's doing 33. She's even, look, she's going faster and not closing the gap. Why? Just, I don't know. There's something not quite right to me with the ride dynamics here. It just isn't. This. Anyway, I'm not complaining because I think this software, when you compare it, I mean, I've been with Swift since almost its inception, and really enjoyed it over there. But in terms of realism, it doesn't hold a candle to RGT. I just love the realism of the riding on RGT, and the drafting dynamics in particular. No silly sticky draft where once you get in the draft of a group, you're never going to leave it. In RGT, you've really got to do work. You're not going to get pulled along unless you know what you're doing. So Ivan is currently, let's just testing the legs of the two behind him, and it does look, let's flick back, there's Cratins, and it looks like May, who, remember folks when I said that yes, he was probably wanting to show them that he was the strongest, but may not actually be the strongest. And these guys are more or less saying to him, well, yeah, okay, we've let you do the work, but and to be honest, that's more or less what I expected to happen. I really honestly expected them to come past me and say, yeah, okay, we've let you do the work. Now it's our turn. Because they were saving so much energy. It was just being silly, pulling them along at 4 watt kilos on the front for those long periods of time. And they were letting him, which, yeah, why not? Somebody wants to go on the front and pull me along at 4 watt kilos, I'll let you do it. Now he's cratting going to spoil my party. I had Ivan as the winner here, so let's see whether let's see whether we could catch up with Cratting. Yeah, I think he can. I think he's got more watt kilos. So my money's still on Ivany. And this is the last sort of like bump, if you want to call it a bump. Probably goes up to about 4%, but it's very short. Big ring, 4.5. There you go. So big ringable, as you can see. Even at a decent cadence, it's big ringable. So, you're out of the saddle, you're pumping your pedals around. 5.5%, so it's a bit steeper than it looks then. So you're pumping the pedals around, out of the ring, out of the saddle rather. And when you get to the top of this rise that you can see on the screen, then you got that nice kicker of a downhill. And you're going to roll into, the speed is going to carry you into the finish because we're almost done here now. So 2 kilometers once he crests this rise here with a lead of 50 meters. Now, is that enough? I think it is. He's going to open the gap here because obviously Cratins is still on the rise. Let's just go back to him. There's Cratins, just gone over the rise now, and May is out of it. He's gone. So it's between these two. And Cratins may well pull some of this distance back. He may pull all of it back actually, because it's downhill now. Another slight little kicker, but the slight little kicker isn't going to affect anything. You can see from the profile, the upper profile, that what I call the kicker is more or less just a small rise. It's not. And you can see that Ivan is just about to, let's go to him, just about to go under the red kite, the 1 kilometre to go banner, with a lead of 47 meters. So, and it's not dropping. Look, he's maintaining his 47 meters. There's the kite. There's Cratins going under the kite, and the distance is 50 meters at the kite, give or take a meter. So Ivan is not going to get caught now. He's away. Having said that, you can see Cratins is putting in the big numbers. He's going red, but Ivan has just got too many watts for him. He's pegged it at 60 meters, and he's just going to carry that to the finish. He can afford to even ease up a little bit. I'm not going to ease up a lot, but with 600 odd meters to go, he's got this in the bag, and he knows it. Just has to keep the pedals going round. Cratins is actually he's no longer trying to catch, because you can see he's eased up too. So Ivan is going to come over the line first and take the honours. Let's just see if I can switch him around slightly. There we go. So there's the line. And yeah, as I say, if he keeps his 60 meters, well, he's increased his 60 meters. So um, in the end, that was pretty comfortable. There we go. And Kratins, as I say, not far behind, but comfortable enough. And May was out of it. And I just think wrong tactics from May. I think doing all that work earlier on, I knew he was going to pay for it later. It's just common sense. It's what riders do, or riders with any sense. They just sit on your wheel and say, yeah, okay, get on with it. Now, this is the interesting one. Are these riders going to battle it out amongst themselves? There's, how many of them is there? Is there 4? Yeah, there's 4 of them. Are they going to ride in together, or are they going to have a bit of a turn? Because I expect Steen will be pretty strong here, but could well have done too much work earlier on. MTO is always strong, but so these 4 will just sort of like I think come into the finish more or less together. So let's see what's happening behind them. They've picked up Luby, but they've dropped one of their own because they were, yeah, there we go. I think we already commented on that earlier, didn't we? So they've picked up a rider who's quite happy to go to the finish with them. So they're coming together. Let's have a quick look. You've got Deli Gorgeous is all on his own. Then you've got Mr. Bradley. You've got Fal. I need to jump on the bike. I'll just do this. And then we've got Genevieve. And then we got Raina. Although it looks like Raina has rain. Oh, the Raina's there. So yeah. So let's go back to the front end, and we've got Steen with 2 kilometers to go on Linden. So Steen's made a bit of a break on the last Kickr. And who you got? You've got MTO has just decided, no, I've had enough of this. So these two are going to sort of like battle it out. I'm just very quickly going to jump on the bike because I don't want to get kicked out again. And here we go under the 1 kilometer to go banner. Are they going to race it, or are they just going to ride together? I think one of them will probably have a sprint, but this is just for fun now. Looks like they're quite happy just to ride shoulder to shoulder and finish together. It's been a good ride by Steen. Well, it's been a good ride by everybody, but hey, you know what I mean. So that's your last bit of slope, and of course you've got Steen heading off into the front. And Lyndon decides to come shooting past. There he is. There's Lyndon. I'll take it, thank you very much, followed very quickly by Steen. And then Pernat, the third member of the group, is on his way too. And there we go. So that's Pernat home, and then we've got Craig and Roddy. Now, obviously, I'm going to see everybody home, but that's going to mean waiting because if we go back through the field, these boys have got 4 kilometres to go, but I think last man on the road has got a fair bit more than that to do. We've got Bradley with 10 to do, still to do, and Genevieve with 12, and Rainer with 13. So 13 kilometres to cover. Another 20 minutes, give or take. Okay, so like I say, these two will stay together to the end. I would have thought they're not going to separate now, so close to the end. And it's been nice to see that little group riding together. Putting in a bit of a dig towards the end, so finishing with a flourish, which is always nice to see. This has been hard work covering because I've been full of cold. My joints and everything are absolutely aching. I've not really done any cycling this week. I'm not so sure I'm going to be well enough to ride on Sunday. I normally try to ride the Sportive myself on the Sunday, but I'm not so sure it's going to be wise this weekend unless this this code does a complete reversal, and I'm clear on Sunday, but I don't think I will be. So I think you're going to have to put up with my dulcet tones on the Saturday's race and Sunday's Sportive, where I'll cover the whole Sportive as a broadcaster rather than as a rider. But I'll probably dig in and out of it. I'm not going to sit here for 3 hours plus. I don't think on Sunday. I think I'll probably just do highlights. Having said that, I usually say that, and I usually do end up sitting for the full duration. So anyway, back to tonight, and this has been a good ride by these two. I think almost 2 hours of riding, so that's a good effort in anybody's books. I think the race tomorrow is going to be well worth watching because over this kind of terrain, with no really big hills, it's going to be fast, and tactics are going to come into it, I feel, as well. When you get terrain which isn't going to be decided by the climbs, then I think you're always going to have team tactics playing the biggest role as we get these two jostling for position for the finish. Nice to see them finishing together. Okay, only a few more riders. Riders decides to take the banner. Only a few more riders left on the road. Let's see who they are. Bernstein has just joined with 1.2 kilometers to go, so I'm sorry, but I'm not going to cover you, Mr. Bernstein. We'll cover Juby, of course. Now he's only ridden half the course, but still a good effort. And he did ride with the group for a little of the way. We did have a couple more late joiners, but they've obviously, when the first finishers came over the line, they've obviously dropped out. But I'm going to follow this fellow home. He's done a significant ride. Looking at the profile, you wouldn't think that it finished on a slope, but obviously it does. Well, it goes, should I say, it goes over a slope before the slight downhill to the finish. So it's only the last couple of 100 meters that are actually downhill. There we go. Just in time for the rain. Oh, and Bernstein's deciding to. Now, remember what I said earlier about it's very, very easy for a rider to late join the ride and put out fantastic power numbers, etc., etc., look really, really strong, like Bernstein's doing here. You know, he's ridden less than a kilometre, and Juby's done 30 odd kilometres, 33 kilometres, and he's still showing him the way to go. So that's where I mean you've got to be careful when picking out strong. You know, there we go. Let's okay. So next rider home is going to be Delhi Georges with 1.6 to go. So yeah, late joiners can sometimes influence the finish of a ride and particularly a race. And it's one of the reasons why I hate to see late joiners um, in the final phases of a race because they can influence the result if they're not careful. So a nice steady effort here. I think when he got dropped from the group, he just decided, okay, I'm going to ride at my own pace and just take it from there. And that's exactly what he's done. 64 kilometres under my belt. I'll take that. Thank you very much. And finishing just under the 2 hour mark. Which is a good benchmark. So there we go, speeding into the downhill finish. Good job, sir. Okay, who's next? Silver's a late joiner, so not join him. Mr. Bradley, and he's got 3.7 kilometres. So while we're looking at Mr. Bradley just coming up this final slope, let's have a check on what's happening behind him. 3.6, 4.4 kilometres to go. Mr. Fowl, and then I'm going to say we can't forget about Genevieve. This has been one of the, for me, this has been one of the rides of the day. When you consider the watt kilos that this girl has been putting out consistently for the whole ride, this has been a great ride by me. And I'm not just saying that because she's a female. I'm saying this has been a really, really good effort. And to my mind, I just think there's something about they don't seem to get, I don't understand how somebody can be putting out more wattage and not close on the riders around. I'm at a loss. But hey, okay, let's get, this is our Lantern Rouge. So we've got 6.3 kilometers from Mr. Rayner. So yeah, another 10 minutes there, give or take. Let's go back to the front. Silver, as you can see, is going nowhere. There's me there. What time is it? I'm going to jump on the bike again shortly to make sure I don't get kicked out. And Bradley, I think, there we go. We got Bradley is the next to finish with 2.4. Let's tell you what we'll do. We'll have a bit of a play. Let's switch the views around a little bit and let me show you how good this software is. Okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to zoom right in, and if you look, you can see that his bicycle computer is a Wahoo Bolt. So you can clearly see the computer out the front of his bike. Let's have a look. He's not using, oh, where's his brakes? He's not using disc brakes, is he? Has he got, no, he's no disc on the back either, so he's using rim brakes. Which I can't quite see. You can see the sponsor and the sponsor's name, the Ravi. It's pretty cool. You can even pick up the logos and the names on the top tubes. So 8 bar. Yeah. I do love this software for the ability to be able to pan around like this. As I say, my only gripe with it is I wish I could click on riders in the list rather than having to use the keyboard to change riders, because that gets very confusing sometimes. I mean, just look at the ride dynamics here, the way that that Bradley is leaning over when going around a corner and everything else, and just the whole dynamics. Look, the movement on the bike, the way it's just so mirrors real, is so realistic. That's a good view. You can even see him, look, changing gear with his hand. So changing gears. Or at least moving his hand position anyway. Here we go, 1 kilometer to go. Let's stay with this view. Well, let's get his bike computer in. Does it even say his distance on his bike computer? I wish we could zoom in even further. Yeah, there we go. Okay, let's get him going over the line. We don't want to miss the line, do we? There's the kite. I really like playing around with this software. It's pretty cool. Especially when you've got groups, and like I say, you can zoom in, change the angle on the groups, and if you could click on the riders, it would be heaven. So that's on my wish list. I'm currently sat at home recording this with, like I say, full of cold, of sore throat, but while I'm actually off the bike and not riding, I'm working on my home studio that I use for doing the recordings and I use for doing the riding. And there's some exciting things happening in terms of I completely gutted it and started from scratch. So you're going to notice some significant changes to the broadcasting over the next few weeks as I start to make it look a lot more professional. And trust me, you will notice the changes because they'll be very, very evident. And that's going to be happening pretty soon. I'm still finding my feet a lot with RGT in terms of covering races and this. Like, I still don't understand all the nuances of it in terms of just what you can do. For example, I haven't practiced with the picture-in-picture yet, or the split screen like Mike does. But I intend getting on top of that over the next few weeks, and then I should be able to offer much better race coverage. So this is Bradley finishing up. Good ride, sir. And then we've got Mr. Fowl, who has the cycling podcast jersey on his back. Credible, or is it incredible? Let's have a look. Incredible. And just make it out. Yeah. So again, you can see he's got a Hubble computer on his bike, but he's running discs. There you go. You can clearly see the disc on the front. Let's have a look at the back. See if we can get a picture of the back. Hang on. Whoa, sorry. There we go. So discs front and back. They go beyond on his bike with the RGT logo just beneath the seat. And he's coming into the finish, so we'll just change the view slightly. There we go. Right, it's a downhill finish. So he's tucking. Here we go. And that's another rider home. Well done, Mr. Fowl. Okay, who's next? Whoops, that's not a good view, is it? Okay, so no, I think we've got Genevieve somewhere. There we go. So this young lady has really had a good ride. And she's on one of the Evos, which is the bike I choose to ride. Really like these bikes. Under the 1 kilometre to go banner, so let's switch around so we get a good view. Zoom out a little bit, that's better. Okay. So a really good effort. And one more rider to finish, and then me, of course, but I don't count, so let's see Genevieve home, and then I'll just quickly jump on the bike, turn the pedals a couple of times to make sure that we don't miss Rainer coming in the end of the ride. So I've enjoyed covering tonight, with it being a shorter format as well, even though I'm under the weather. The only thing I haven't had is a drink. I haven't had a cup of tea or brought a drink up with me, and I should have done really, but my throat is very, very sore, so this is probably a good idea to get out of the way. And therein lies the problem of having young children in the house. You pick up all the bugs and everything that's going. So I'm you know, colds are just something I get used to. But this has been a particularly bad one. My throat is just on fire, and I've really suffered with my breathing this last week. Couldn't ride at all on Thursday night, so. Right, well done, Genevieve. Good ride. And one more rider on the road, and that's Mr. Rayner. So let's catch up with you, sir. Come on, finish it off. You've only got 2.2 kilometres to go. He's on the final slope now, so yeah, we'll stay with Mr. Rayner. I think he's riding the Evo. Yeah, he is. There we go. So 2.2 kilometres to go. I'm just going to flick to me, and then we'll turn the pedals and to make sure that we don't get kicked out as I'm saying my goodbyes. So what you have to do when you jump on the bike is just check that your power's showing, and as a double check I always make sure my cadence is on screen before I jump back off the bike. So that's enough. I don't have to do a great deal of distance. You can see in total I've only done 0.66 of a kilometre, 6.7 now, but that's enough to sort of like keep me in the event, and then I can go back to the coverage, which of course is just the one rider now, Mr. Rayner, still struggling on this last slope. Obviously very tired legs from Mr. Rayner here, although looking at his cadence, he's certainly whizzing the pedals round. But there we go. We'll soon be over this hill and on the downslope. So thanks everybody for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the coverage. The Sportives are a funny one to sort of like commentate on, because I really like to go into tactics and all this, especially with the drafting side of things. So I tend to get a bit carried away when it comes to saying, well, you know, these riders should ride together, this rider should close up, this rider should drop back. But that's just my my race brain kicking in. And Sportives are unofficial races. I don't care what anybody says. You can't tell me that the two riders out front at the end of this ride weren't racing each other, because they definitely were. And everybody who's up for it and strong enough always wants to be the first finisher. So I tend to commentate on Sportives from a racing perspective rather than a sort of Sunday group ride perspective. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just my take on it. But I am quite vocal when it comes to tactics on this. And the person that lost out today, tactics-wise, was undoubtedly Team A, for doing all those strong pulls on the front, showing the group how strong he was. And they just took advantage of it. None of the two riders he was with were prepared to come around him and do a similar kind of pull. They just let him do the work. And he paid for it at the end. I've no doubt he was a strong rider, but he just, those kind of tactics aren't going to cut it. When you've got riders with a little bit of nonce. So, yeah. But a really good win today, and, well, good riding all round, but a good win. And I've enjoyed the coverage. So that'll do for tonight. We'll see you tomorrow. I think it kicks off at, the race kicks off at 1400 hours GMT, if I'm not wrong. Have a look anyway. I'll put up a link to the live coverage on the forums. And if you're still with me, give this video a like. Please subscribe. It will help me grow the channel. And everybody stay safe. Enjoy your weekend. I don't know how much longer this lockdown is going to continue for. It's been a nightmare at my end because I just absolutely love getting out on the road. For me, the road is where I leave my problems behind, and yeah, it's difficult riding indoors and with the two girls and getting the colds and this. You see, I will ride outdoors when I've got a cold. I will ride outdoors because it helps to be able to spit out the gunge and everything else. But I obviously can't do that indoors. The wife would definitely complain. So yeah, I miss not being able to ride in real life. Anyway, Mr. Rayner is bringing us home to the finish. Well done, sir. Good ride. Even though you're last man on the road, no less a man. And thank you, everybody. Once again, hit that like button, hit the subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.